Hey guys, I'm here in my backyard. A big typhoon is about to hit. We're gonna do a read through of the very first issue of Weekly Manga Action right here on Gaijinguy. Hey guys, very excited about the video I'm going to be showing you today that features both this work, Oboro Junicho, and the very first appearance of Lupin III. So please join me and please leave comments and consider subscribing if this kind of thing is your thing. Let's begin our read through of Shukan Manga Action, the very first issue of Weekly Manga Action, which would later be home to such timeless classics as Lone Wolf and Cub and Crayon Shin-chan. So before we jump into the read-through, it would behoove us to look at the history behind what is considered the first weekly seinen comics mag. First, the Jinguy defines a seinen as comics for readers older than readers of shonen manga. The recent comic Losers by Yoshimoto Koji tells the story of how this mag began with editor Shimizu Fumito, known as Shimizu Bunjin or Bunchan, who worked at minor publisher Futabasha in 1965. Kashihon was on its last legs. Adult comics were mostly one panel or four panel gags or political commentary. Shonen mags were immensely popular, but there wasn't much for the young adult crowd except maybe the monthly Garo, which had only been out for a year and was for a little bit more hardcore manga fans. Shimizu finds a doujinshi, a fanzine that had been tossed in the garbage. And it's a zine by a guy named Kato Kazuhiko, The Future Monkey Punch. Kato had sent out copies of this fanzine to all the publishers. His work was strongly inspired by Mad Magazine's Mort Drucker. Kato wanted to draw in a style that was unique and that did not exist in Japan at the time. And Shimizu, the editor, he responded to that. And Shimizu contacted him and convinced him to keep drawing and asked him to practice drawing women, to add women to his comics. And he hired him to do several short, one-off story manga jobs. And then he suggested that Kato use the pen name Monkey Punch. Shimizu decided, based on Kato's work, or should we call him Mr. Punch, decided that he needed to make a whole brand new magazine in order to feature this hot new creator. So now let's take a look at the issue and then jump back to a little bit more history later. So first let's look at the cover, dated August 10th, 1967, actually published July 7th, 1967, subtitle Nouvelle Comic Gekiga. So instead of calling it manga here, gekiga there. There's a couple of interesting things. You have Monkey Punch's debut, well not debut, but his first work featuring Lupin III, Lupin III. And this is something interesting. I'd never seen this before. This actually mentions Maurice Leblanc, who is the original creator of Arsène Lupin, the gentleman thief, on whom Lupin III is based. Monkey Punch also did the cover. As you can tell, he got very adept at drawing the female figure. Also featured here is Baron Yoshimoto, Man Without a Name, and several other creators, Kojima, Mori Tetsuro, Kojima Goseki, who we know, Ishimori Shotaro, later known as Ishinomori Shotaro, and Mizuki Shigeru. All big names associated with this comic. Okay, here we go. Jumping in. All right, here is the opening splash with Lupin III. It doesn't show us who Lupin is because that's part of the mystery. And it says here is Monkey Lupin. First, the start Boto Nouvelle comic. Katsugeki, action, kyohen, action, long-running comic. So, and I've shown you guys bits of this when I talked about Kato's kashihon work. Oh, I forgot to mention here, the copy here, Chumoku no Mangashi Soukango. So first issue, the mag that you've been hearing about, featuring a new color feature, color nude feature, photo feature. So here we have the first comic. It's in two colors. We have this gentleman in the car talking to this older gentleman. And then we have a party scene. Go, 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 it says. And this is, of course, Lupin III, the very first. Here we have full color for this one page. And yeah, just that page. And we're at a go-go party, which is kind of like a rave. And this is the story of a rapist and a murderer who is pretending to be Lupin III. The reason for the rapine is that the one gentleman has hidden, this guy, has hidden microfilm in his one of his daughter's private places, and this guy is determined to find that microfilm by hook or by crook. And I'm going to mention that seinen manga has a lot of rape, and I just wonder how powerless and insecure the average guy reading this stuff has to be even a little okay with it. Like sex, I get it, for this age group, of course, have the sex. But magazines were kind of making it clear that they were for older, arguably mature readers, but I guess sex between two consensual adults in a pretty uptight society itself seemed fantastic or something. Go figure. So just be warned when dealing with older mags like this that there are representations and situations that are deplorable, horrible, and won't be defended by me. But I do believe that it's better to take a sober look at where we've been, so I won't completely ignore these situations either. So thank you in advance for your understanding. By the way, do me a favor and please do not try to defend the indefensible in the comments. This is not the forum for that. Thanks. So this story ends with Lupin being found out, the actual Lupin, and this Lupin killing quite a long story. The actual Lupin killing the imposter, clearing his name that way, but still stealing the microfilm, and then throwing the microfilm up to a dove, and I guess gives himself up for capture because he's wearing handcuffs with this old man who is his grandfather, who now we can assume is the original Arsène Lupin, and I guess The grandfather is working for the law now, but is somehow okay with his grandson carrying on his life of crime. So anyway, really, really dynamic stuff, and stuff that you didn't see at that time and still don't see this kind of dynamism these days. Here's the contents, and then we move on to Ueda Ippei, his Pinboke time machine, out of focus time machine. And these are 1 to 4 panel gags. There's movie and TV news down at the bottom, music, sports. One of the gags is a bit off color, not intentionally, but they use the epithet kurombo, which is used as an epithet against black people, but at the time it was also used as a way to call women who had very deep tans, but still, you know, not a nice word. And then we go on to Kojima Ko's Oshaka Bozu Reitsuden. Kojima Ko. Kojima Ko, this is sexy Buddhist humor. You know, monks are not well known, but well known in literature for being horny bastards. And this one kind of touches on that. This artist is known for his sexy female kappa drawings, and they're very stylish, very nice. Coming up next, we have Nippon Ichi Taro. So this is a salaryman story. You can see not a lot of, you know, very light lines characterized by basically the comics that were made for adult magazines. So this kind of thing is going to fade out to an extent. I mean, you're still going to have gags, but the style I don't think will be as light a touch as we are shown here. We got some go-go news, I guess. All right, here we go. This is Kojima Goseki's Oboro Junincho, the 10 scrolls of Oboro. I've talked about this before. I mentioned that I've double dipped it. I had the physical edition and I had forgotten that I had it, and I bought the digital version, but this is the very first chapter of that. And until I decided to actually do the read through, I didn't even realize that this was in this magazine, in this very first magazine. As was mentioned in my interview with Mr. Hashimoto, this particular work is considered a transitional work between Kojima's earlier, softer, female-focused kashihon work for Tsubame and Hibari, etc., and his later male-focused seinen work for magazines such as Kozure Okami, you know, Lone Wolf and Cub, and such. So I've talked about this before, but it's a focus on a female ninja, Oboro, and not just one. I think the collection that I have focuses on several different female ninjas, all using the same name. But I might be confusing that with Shirato Sanpei's similar work. And we have the nude photo collections, which I'm not going to go into. Right here we have a poem that mentions sex clubs where sex can be purchased, called the Pink Salons. and art here by Yoko Tadao or Tadanori. And then we have the readers page along with a survey asking readers which 3 comics they liked the best, which 3 stories they liked the best, and which genres they like, including action, ninpo, which is a kind of ninja comic, salaryman, etc. And also we have here at the bottom a invitation for people to send in for 2,000 people to get free tickets to a premiere of this movie called Gokiburi Gyangu. Gokiburi means cockroach gang, but it's actually a French-Italian flick called La Métamorphose des Cloportes, or just called Cloportes in woodlice in English. So there was one guy whose job was mainly just to write this stuff. Isn't that interesting? That's his job. He goes in and he just writes these. All right, here we have Kyo Konogoro by Taki Juro. I could not find much information on Taki Juro. He's done some other magazine work. That's about as much as I can tell you. I can tell you I find this infinitely more interesting than the other kind of adult magazine holdovers because it's a kind of slice of life about Kyoto. Everyone speaks in the Kyoto dialect, and it's just, I think it's more dynamic and more attractive comic story than the other ones. It has more detail in the backgrounds. There's more black used on the page, which makes it easier for your eyes to follow the story without, straining your eyes, and just has some interesting cultural information about Kyoto. So, and then we have some serialized fiction, and this is an interesting feature in a young men's magazine, basically a horoscope. And it says, Shinji-yo ga shinjimai ga. In other words, whether you believe it or not, I could care less. That's basically how I would translate that. And it's got advice for people who are born in a certain month. My specific advice was wear a cotton jacket and you'll be successful in your hunt for a girl with sunglasses. You're sure to get her to meet you for tea, but don't expect more than that or she'll escape from you. Okay, very problematic language, very stalkery stuff. As for the horses, it says, for gambling advice, trust your instinct and take it slow and easy is the overall advice. So, believe it or not, this guy, Chimpe, he could care less. All right, we have a couple puzzles here. And now we have Tezuka protege, Tokiwaso member, originator of Japanese hero teams, Sentai, Tokusatsu, and record-holding super prolific mangaka, Ishimori Shotaro, or as he is later known, Ishinomori Shotaro. This is SF Spy Mystery 009-1 or 00 Kunoichi. And Kunoichi is actually one, it says here 9-1, but apparently Kunoichi, of course, is female ninja. So it's kind of a hidden message there. That's why it's kind of set off from the 00. Of course, this is Sean Connery as James Bond heyday, right? Very popular. And in this magazine, we have Super Spy 009-1, and she is looking for a certain scientist. I think she finds a scientist, but the scientist's brain is missing. It's been transplanted into an animal, and his assistant knows the secret. She's beset by a huge gorilla that possibly has a human brain or has been made smarter, and she defeats the gorilla with her boob guns, which, you know, as we know from Austin Powers, you can't be a female spy without boob guns, apparently. Right? No? Okay. So eventually we find out the assistant is not a good guy, and the boob guns must fire again. He shoots at her, and she's okay. So we don't know why that is as yet. And then we find out he's in pain. He says, "Kill me quick." She does. And we find out the brain is actually inside this alligator. All right. So you can kind of see that the lines are a bit sketchier, rougher, maybe more sophisticated than his boys' comics work. And yeah, that's a cool take. Apparently a lot of these creators weren't given a lot of time to make the stories for this mag. But anyway, up here on the left, you can see very distinct style, right? Very strongly American comics influenced, but still has its own particular taste. This is Act 1 of the Man with No Name, Nanonai Otoko series, Act 1. And this particular episode is called Diving Saksen, Operation Diving or Operation Dive. Art by Baron Yoshimoto. Story by novelist Oyabu Haruhiko. So here we have a guy with no name. He's a spy with no name who has been brought in to work with Barbara from Interpol to catch a group of female terrorist thieves. By the way, for some reason, this spy with no name is not a fan of women from China or America, but is really enamored with German women because, you know, all women from the same country are exactly the same, of course. You have the sound effects in English and Japanese as well. Here's the diving operation. So this guy is of course a James Bond stand-in. They're doing great until the female spies kick everybody's asses. They kill everybody. They kill him dead. And he's the only one. He gets captured and he survives. And we're vrooming along on a hovercraft here. And we find out that Barbara from Interpol is actually a spy. But luckily, there's another spy who has infiltrated the group, and it's the real Barbara from Interpol. And they end up on a raft, which we never see anything like that ever again in a spy movie. And then they have a little ad for the next story coming up. So a little bit more information about Yoshimoto, Baron Yoshimoto. He was the second artist that editor Shimizu wanted to build this magazine around. And though this issue has several big names, it was this guy and Monkey Punch that the manga Losers focuses on as what inspired Shimizu to basically create the mainstream seinen genre. Basically, that he knew that he would have to create a revolution in order to promote these very unique talents. And this is what he chose to do it. And I call it creating the mainstream seinen genre because a lot of kashihon works were kind of filling that gap, But it's the kashihon veterans that would go on to become the big seinen creators that we know and love. And Shimizu was also the one to change Yoshimoto's name from Tadashi to Baron Yoshimoto, which Yoshimoto was not happy with at first. By the way, Losers portrays the Baron as quite a character, where many other manga artists have their beret and their, their kind of rumpled suits. He was always very sharp. He did not like the idea that comic artists portrayed this kind of poor image, and he always brought his comics pages in a suitcase, and so he would slam the suitcase out on the table and flip it open and take a look. So very interesting character. Okay, let's go to the next story. You recognize this art. This is Mizuki Shigeru. Beautiful landscape stuff in whatever he does. This is called En no Gyoja, and it is part of his Japan folklore series, Nihon no Minwa series. Okay, so let's go ahead and flip it over. By the way, En no Gyoja, this is a person. He's considered to be the founder of the Shugendo folk religion. It's like this mountain religion, a kind of offshoot of Shinto. And in this story, we have our two intrepid explorers finding a hole in the ground. When they explore, they find interesting artifacts, including a scroll. And this scroll, they take it to a wise older man who knows about this kind of thing, and he explains to them, this is a scroll left by En no Gyoja. It was a spell, a magical spell that he was working on, and they decide to try the spell, and they have to add ingredients like piss and earth from, like dirt from Mount Fuji, and several other ingredients, and it takes like a week to make. And finally they put all the ingredients together, and this floating mysterious thing appears in the air, floating, fwa 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 fwa, and it floats out into the world. And they're just saying, like, we spent 50,000 yen just to make that spell, and the thing disappeared. However, when it comes back, it brings 10,000 yen. I'm sorry, I got that wrong. It brings 100,000 yen back. And this was 50,000 yen they spent, and it brings back 100,000 yen, which is about $1,000, and plops it in their hands, and then it goes off again. And it never comes back, but they read in the newspaper about this strange, of course this strange bubble floating in the air, which is redistributing the wealth. It's taking rich people's money and giving it to the poor. And it continues to do this until finally, as it says on the news here, that the government considered it a threat to public safety and used some kind of chemical weapons on it. And you can see the old man's determined, next time let's make one that won't be susceptible to chemical weapons. And basically they're saying, hey, yeah, let's do it. Let's redistribute all the wealth. So that's quite a radical take, but this was the time of radical takes. This is the time where you have these student demonstrations and such. And then on the end, we have a special shop advertisement for a shop that has air guns and other accessories that will make you feel cool like James Bond. It's a special Bond shop in Tokyo Taitoku Inueno, it says. Short of like to scene. They also says it, it's Inueno next to the Hibiya movie theater. And I think I know which theater that is, but could be wrong. Just my memory. But anyway, there you have it. Fairly deep dive into the magazine that fueled the seinen magazine explosion of the late 60s. Though Weekly Manga Action faced tons of competition, it continued to weather all troubles and is still in production today as the bi-monthly Manga Action. So thank you, Shimizu Bunjin, for bringing us a media through which we could experience Monkey Punch, Baron Yoshimoto, and thank you guys for joining. See you next time.